Hall of Fame broadcaster Marty Brenneman here, and he's the best storyteller in the game, and it's time to sit back, relax, and have some laughs. Welcome to the Mayor's Office, and here's your host, Sean Casey.
At it again, Chinch.
Yes, we
At
are.
it again, brother.
Powerhouse show today.
Powerhouse. Oh, yeah. Powerhouse show, dude. One of the greatest hitters of all time decides to join us today, which I love. And was a teammate of mine, which I'm so fortunate when we were young bucks back in the day. I think they might have traded the wrong guy, though, when I look back, though, because let's go down these stats real quick, Chinch. 18-year big league career, 279, almost 2,500 hits, 2,340 hits, 406 doubles. Now, I had 320 doubles, and I was like, yes, 320 doubles. I had no idea this guy had 406 of them. 439 home runs, which is second all-time Chicago White Sox, 2,265 games with the White Sox, more total bases than anybody, 4,010. Now, listen, six-time All-Star, ALCS MVP in 2005, World Series champ 2005, Roberto Clemente Award winner in 2014, retired his number in 2015. I mean, the list could go on. And he has a freaking statue of himself. You know you're a good player when you get a statue. So let's bring in my man, my good buddy, Paul Konerko. Paulie, what's up, buddy?
Sean, what's up, baby? It's good to be on here. I'm happy to be with you today. This is pretty cool. It's my first official podcast.
That's crazy.
You know, so I'm a little nervous. So cut me some slack if I get a little, long-winded or something like that.
Well, the greatest thing, bro, is when I had shot the text out, see if you'd come on. You're like, yeah. You know, what am I doing? This is my first podcast. You know, what time? And then we just found out you just downloaded Zoom too. You've never.
I did. True story. Like 10 minutes ago, I just downloaded Zoom on my computer for the first time. I try to go the opposite way of the masses. You know, like when everybody's got the Zoom thing going, I just I try to find reasons not to buy into what's the current thing going on. You know?
Oh, that's great. So, Paulie, what are you doing, man? What's Paul Konerko doing right now?
Let's see, kids.
Uber driver for the kids.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the day is. I have 3 kids, 3 different schools, 3 different start times, 3 different finish times.
Boy.
So it's a handful with the scheduling. You got sports, you got activities. So everything revolves around that, as you know. And in between, I try to find some time for some bad golf and watch some sports, watch hockey, watch golf, and just be a dad, man. That's my goal when I got done playing in 2000 at the end of 2014 was like, I just want to go away. Like I was, as you know, Case, like if you do it right and you play a long time and you do it right, you're so burned out at the end of it that. And it's not like burned out like when like doing something for a week. Like when you do something for 20 straight years, I'm still like recovering from the burnout 7-8 years later. Like I knew when I was done, like I wanted to go away for a long time, and I with the idea that like I might never come back into that walk of life again, but I need to go away for a long time. And right now I'm in the middle of that, or maybe even, I'm like 7-8 years into it. So, and I do get the itch a little bit here and there, like about, but stuff like this, honestly, like you get to talk some baseball, you get to get on, like I kind of get my fill, and I can go work at the high school with high school hitters or my kid or my kid's team. And, and do that. And I get just as much out of that as opposed to being as the same as like being in a official position with a team or something like that,
Yeah. Dude, I feel that same way. I got 2 sons that are playing college baseball, but when they were growing up, you have 2 sons that are 16 and 13. Those ages were so great as far as like, hey, Dad, you want to go hit? Yeah, I want to go hit. I remember, Paulie, did you ever do this? Like a couple of times I put the ball on the tee. I'm trying to show the kids what to do, and they're not really getting it. And I'm like, hey, let Dad show you. Rock it. I'm like, hey, listen, I still got it. But did you ever do that with the kids? Like, hey, let me show you what I'm talking about here.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, you have to learn, as you know, patience, because I don't remember what I was like when I was that age, let's say 13 years old. Right. And we got so far down the line with this thing that things we assume are just common sense or common, that you should be able to just do. Like, listen, I'm going to put this tee in here. We're going to set it up real high up and in, and I want you to shoot this ball the other way, and I want you to get inside of it. I want you to do all this. What do you mean you can't do it? Let's go, get the path right. And, so I definitely, I started coaching my kids' club team 5 years ago, and it's been kind of like a constant process to just become more patient and to, understand how to deal with, it doesn't matter how much you know about the game. It certainly helps at moments, but you have to learn how to deal with kids, with children.
Yeah.
And that's been a struggle all the way through, because like I'm one, like I have very little patience, and I just expect excellence right away,
I remember Casey, we were working together, and he came into the office one day. He was so frustrated because your son was about 11 or 12 years old, and he was playing basketball. And during the game, you were like, "Hey, do this, do that, whatever." And he's like, "I'm fine, Dad." And I remember Sean coming in going, "I was a professional athlete. Why don't these kids listen to me? They never listen to me about this stuff."
Oh, I mean, listen, listen, I'll sum it up right here. My son goes to a hitting guy.
Exactly. So did mine. Mine did too.
Yeah. So, I mean, that tells you everything you need to know, because it's not about how much you know. It's about the voice of who it's coming from. And, and the guy's great too. But honestly, I've learned, as much. This is a guy local here. He works with a lot of pro guys. I could name him off, a lot of major league guys, a lot of college guys. And I've enjoyed going to watch some of these sessions, because I was always a pretty thoughtful hitter and really got into it deep, but since I've retired, I would say over the last 7 years, I've become much smarter. I mean, obviously I don't do it anymore, but in terms of how to express it and what makes everything tick. And a lot of it's from the guy he goes to see. I learn a lot from him. It's actually interesting to see how much I didn't know that I could just do. And I never really put labels on it, but now you have somebody who really is in the weeds, kind of giving you real evidence and real science behind why things work,
Oh, it's crazy you say that, because when I left baseball, when I retired in 08, 09, MLB Network started. So, one of the things that we do at the network is, we do the demos, you go to the field and Studio 42 and you do the demos. I started to realize, wow, I had so much to learn about teaching hitting. Right. I knew what I knew about myself as a hitter, let the ball travel. I like to have my hands back, get inside it, drive it to left center, whatever my thought process was. But I realized I didn't necessarily know how to teach hitting. And I think there was a big difference there. And I think it's the feel versus real. What's really happening and what I feel are two different things. Did you find that same thing as far as,
Well, I think the biggest thing I've learned is that, and I had great hitting coaches. I was with two guys for about 8-9 years when I really kind of learned how to hit and what I believed how to hit. And I was with them all the time. And I could trust these guys. I could put a blindfold on and just be just tell me what to do, point me in the right direction, and just really learn from these guys. That was Greg Walker and Mike Gellinger with the White Sox. And, so I had a vocabulary of all the things that I used in terms of words and in terms of talking about hitting, that I knew that like you're saying, that you knew for yourself, and we could look at each other just by the look in our eyes. And I knew the word that was going to come out of his mouth or vice versa. So I now, when I work with say my son or kids on his team, or I work with some high school kids here, I'm still after the same thing, my beliefs on what makes hitting what I believe to be good. And there's different ways to skin a cat there. I mean, there are some different ways to do it, but you always kind of believe your way is the best way. And but there's too many guys doing it. It's to be a coincidence. The good ones. So, but what I've learned is that I needed to come up with. I couldn't be so stubborn with my own words. So I had to realize that different words work for different people. So now I have an array of a vocabulary, because I'll use words with a guy and say, well, this and this, or have you thought about sinking into your back leg? And it's you see the light bulb go off, because I've been using the word load, or I've been using the word, and it just doesn't respond to that guy. And so you have to have kind of a toolbox to teach that. You just need to be able to pull out things out of your hat, that is different words. And because with me, it was always the same words all the time, 100%. I would add new ones in, but once it was a word and a way I thought about something, it was kind of locked in,
Yeah. Dude, you're one thing about you, bro. And, knowing you when we played together in 98, I didn't really get to know you as a hitter, but I talked to Adam Dunn, who was in there a couple of years with you. And he said, man, this guy is a perfectionist. He's really an artist for his craft. So when you talk about you have new tools in your toolbox now, talking to kids, what were the tools in your toolbox? What did you tell yourself when you were playing for the White Sox and putting up the numbers that you put up? What were your main things for hitting?
Well, I mean, with me, when I think back of my life as a hitter, it's really pretty simple. There's everything before June of 2003 and everything after.
Really?
Yeah, and the reason being is, so when I was with you, say in Cincinnati and all that, I'd always hit in high school. I had hit in the minor leagues, but I was a very rotational, steep. Didn't have a lot of answers for a lot of different pitches, but I could really hit a bad fastball. That was, I could hit fastballs, and I could. But I always get really hot, really cold, really didn't, and had no answers why. Like I would just ride the wave. Like I'm hot. This is great. And, I'm really cold and like crying in my, sucking myself in the bed. And I really didn't have any answers for anything. And then it reached a point in 2003. I got off to a terrible, terrible start with, again, just thinking about hitting as I've always thought about hitting my whole life. And I get so bad, I got the hitting coach fired. And so they hired Greg Walker to come in, and I was to tell you how bad I was doing at the time. It was June. We're sitting in the dugout, early in the day, like 2:00, just looking out at the field. This is like June. It's shortly before the All-Star break, mid-June or something like that. And I'm hitting, I think, like a $190 with 3 and 18.
Oh my God! Really?
In June, right? So think about that. And I'm supposed to be like, and by the way, I don't do anything else well. So,
you have to hit. You have to hit.
So, and he sits down with me and he says, "Listen, man, I see what you're doing, and I'm going to tell you, I've been out of the game 10 years. He had retired 10 years earlier and got back in the game, but he had gone on a mission. He had thought, he played in the big league 7 or 8 years. And he's like, Paul, he's a big guy, big, strong guy. And he said, I always thought I was a better hitter than I showed. And I knew I had a lot of problems with my swing, and I didn't know why. And I didn't really have a bunch of people around me to teach me, or I just, not making excuses, but I just always knew there was more in there. So he went on like a quest when he was retired, and like about 5-6 years into his retirement, he started to like learn and meet people and explore. So when he finally got back in the game, he coached a year at AAA, and then he got this job halfway through that year. He says to me, like, I know what you have going on, and like, I can fix it. But for to do that, you're going to have to 100% buy in with me. And, it's not going to be easy because you have a lot of things that are not in good places, but you can do this. And I know how to fix it. I have answers. And he goes, it might get a little worse before it gets better, which is not something you want to hear when you're hitting a $187, but for a $190. But I was like, man, let's do it. What do I got to lose? And it was just kind of like one of those things. It didn't happen immediately, but I started to see my work in like flips or in BP. I started to hit balls, and I'm like, I've been swinging a bat my whole life, and I've never hit balls. Like I've never driven balls out to right field in batting practice. I've never, as a right-handed hitter. And I started to see things, and it was like a new toy. And a lot of it had to do with the lower half. I won't get into the big details and all that, but it was just a completely different way to think about hitting. And so that moment on, like I would change my stance, I would do different things, and I would tinker. But the philosophies and just basically the overall principles of what he taught me, which is what a lot of guys, this is like all pre, like everything we were working on then. You hear these stories about like, Turner or JD Martinez and all that. It's all the same stuff. It was just a little previous of that. And I'm sure there was guys previous of me as well. Right. It's always a kind of a full circle thing, but it was definitely like get the ball off the ground, get it in the air. How do we do that? More linear, not rotational stuff. And so from that moment, again, I would tinker, I would do things, but like my mind about what makes a good hitter and the principles that I bought into are the same as I sit here today as they were probably at the start of the 2004 season. Like I've never second guessed anything since then,
Yeah, dude, I love Paul. This is so good. Explain that really quick. More linear than rotational.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously the end result, what we want is we want a bat path that is going to drop in the zone early and stay through it long in more of a north to south manner, as opposed to an east to west manner. And, it sounds easy enough until they start, pounding you in with fastballs, changeups away. I mean, the whole thing's all the corruptions that pitchers can do to you out there.
Corruption.
A lot of things, what it really boils down to, I think, a lot of times is the body position upon what people would call either your launch position, which is you're in your stance. I look at the hitting kind of three big things: stance, and then what I call A is everything you do from your stance to heel down, front heel down. So there's A. B would be everything after that. So like when I'm working with my kids or I work with my kid or whatever, if I'm talking to one of the kids at the high school or a college kid, I try to get them into that mindset right away. So we know what we're talking about. Like, are we talking about A stuff? Or are we talking about B stuff here? And a lot of times everybody wants to talk B, like it's about the swing. It's about the swing. And I'm sitting there going, listen to me, your A is brutal. Like, right? Like you can't ever get to the B that you want in your mind with where you're at in your A position, and so that launch position or platform or whatever you want to call it, ground zero from your stance to that heel position, to me, that is one of the hugest things, creating the proper separation so we can even begin to fight to have the swing we want in that long linear way that's going to be able to hold up. Because let's be honest, you've been there, Case. When you make that decision on the ball, it's a lot closer to the pitcher than it is to you. And a lot of times you're wrong, but yet you're still committed. So you need to have a swing that holds up in a way that you're going to be. I mean, if you have 180 hits a year, that's a great year. And you probably smoke 80 of those. With the other 100, you need to figure out ways to find holes and to have balls go over people's heads, jam shots over the infield, ground balls up the middle instead of second base for you or shortstop for me. So all that comes from all the, the granular, small things in the body, I believe, where weight's distributed and all those types of things. I mean, obviously it's a deep dive, and believe me, I've gone down some rabbit holes.
But you're saying heel. You guys, if Little League coaches teach kids, balls of your feet, you guys, I've never heard anybody say heel.
Well, I think your ground, the ground is your best friend. So you got to get your heel down. Yeah. If that's that's the base. If you don't have your heel down, guess what? Doesn't matter what you do after that because your swing is going to be crap. It's going to be horse shit.
I mean, you want to listen. At the end of the day, you want a two-piece swing, and what does that mean? High level hitting, and you want to have a two-piece swing. So what does that mean? It means that you go from your stance, whatever that is. And I'm not too critical of stances. I mean, you see some guys with some wacky, crazy stances that get it done. It doesn't matter where you start. It matters where you get to that A position, as I said. Now, there's some guys that are in just such a bad stance. You're like, hey, man, you can make this easier for yourself. Right. But that aside, when you get from your stance, you want to have that front heel engaged into the ground before you begin to take it out from there with your path. And what happens a lot of times, you get a lot of one-piece swings where guys are late. And that's the hardest thing I've learned over the last couple of years to teach. How do you teach timing and rhythm? Like I can sit here and talk mechanics all day with anybody, right. And like you can agree on like you can know what exactly is right. But if a guy in the game can't be on time and can't be in rhythm, well, everything's out the window, right? And so that's like what we would hear, like 5 o'clock hitter. Well, like. Right. Anybody can take BP and just be launching bombs and be the best hitter you've ever seen. But now you have to actually put that to work in a game and be able to, to do that in a game. And so having that front heel, even though it happens later than we think, probably that front heel hits. And if you watch, I have a great picture on my phone, but it's a picture. It's a collage of about, I don't know, maybe 25 or 40 of the best hitters of all time. And what it shows them is in that launch position. I mean, we're talking like Willie Mays to, Mike Trout to, all over the board, all these great hitters. And it shows them in that launch position. And what it shows is like, they are almost all the same.
Wow.
And they all have different finishes. They all started in different stances. But to me, that is like kind of where you got to strive as a hitter to get to. And most hitters they would just want to talk about their swing. They want to talk about what went wrong there and all that. It's like, you never had a chance, bro. You never had a chance, Right.
Wow. It's something that you think is so basic that everybody knows, but that's not true. Like, especially when you're teaching it to kids, like, no, you got to do this right first, get your foot down, really see the ball and attack it. I know for you, Paul, you kind of, Chinch, is that it right there?
Yeah, that's a good one right there. There it is.
It's kind of close to what you're talking about. It's not exactly.
Yeah, that might be it. I don't know. But like you look at some of those names, right?
Yeah.
And obviously like let's just look for an example. Like, let me see here. You got like Pujols, right?
Yeah.
And then you have, say, Vladdy.
Yeah.
Vladdy and Pujols, like obviously two crazy different stances, right? One guy's super wide, Pujols.
Yeah.
And then Vladdy, who goes from a much narrower place. But at the end of the day, they're getting to that spot. What's amazing about Pujols is that obviously with his big wide stance, he would just have really no like kind of big movements or anything. It was just like heel up, heel down very quick, didn't gain much ground. He was almost in his launch position in his stance. And he just kind of had a little bit of has a little shift and that's it. But like that right there, this is what I was saying earlier. Yeah. What you're looking at right there with all those hitters and everything they did in the game, that's not a coincidence.
Yeah, right.
Like, so when I see some guy or some kid I work with, that's like, this is the way I do it. I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, there's a good chance that like, that's not going to work because.
And by the way, I hit 400 homers and you didn't, right?
Well, no, I like to tell people like, this isn't magic, it's math, and like, there is things that are, again, the rhythm and the timing might be where the magic is, but in terms of body parts and weight distribution and where you are in space, there's not too many. Like you gotta be good. Like, watching like golf, I associate the baseball swing much more to golf. And there's guys that are really good golfers that can watch a golfer who also is thought of as a good golfer and right off the bat say, this guy will always struggle because of this. And they're right. And so, guys that know hitting and know that what I'm talking about, they can say the same things about hitters. Now, there is another piece of the equation for me, and that is, you have guys that are like, you have mechanics, and I was heavily mechanic, like heavy in my world. I felt like when I had really good mechanics and knew everything was in place, I gained a lot of confidence from that. Then there's guys that don't want to hear about that, don't really know, and they're super confident guys, and you can't tell them they're not good, and they're ultra competitors. And they're just like example, Aaron Rowan, right? Like I played with Aaron Rowan and he was just, you couldn't tell him he wasn't good. Like he believed that he would do good and he believed that he was going to succeed. He'd go up and hit, 8 ground balls to the third baseman, come around it. Like we talked about rotational east to west swing, roll over or whatever, come back to the dugout and be sitting there and be like, man, I'm close. And I'm like, close. I'm like, I would have quit the game like 5 at bats ago. Like
make an adjustment.
There is a sliver of this that it's not all about having the greatest swing. You need to have certain things that are very good, but there's other guys who make up for it in other areas. Like I was actually kind of a low confidence kind of guy. I gained confidence from knowing that I was technically sound. When I wasn't good in those areas, I had a lot of bad games because I couldn't go out and towards the end of my career, I did it more, but a lot of my career, I gave away a lot of at bats and a lot of home runs and a lot of good things because I just knew it wasn't good and I couldn't let go of that, Yeah. And so I always look at a hitter like that, like, mechanics, street smarts, grit and competitiveness, all that stuff. I mean, you look at like Miguel Cabrera, he's probably the best I've ever saw at having all of those cups full.
Yeah.
In my opinion, like he was the best at all of them. And, and a big, strong guy on top of it. So that's why he is who he is,
So we talk about mechanics and everything like that. And I know you obviously know how big your process is at the plate too mentally. What was your process at the plate? Were you a hunt the fastball guy? Were you a guess hitter? What was your process?
Yeah, always to me, I mean, it was all off of the fastball. Like I tell people all the time, when I'm working with kids, like, listen, I played 20 years professionally, 3 in the minor leagues, 17 in the big leagues. And I said, there wasn't one night throughout that whole time where I put my head on the pillow and I was like, I really feel good on breaking balls. like I never, yeah, right. So the point is that what you have to be is you have to be able to hold up enough that you can either lay off of them, pick up some knocks and drive in some runs when they're ahead of you and you can just scrape by. But at the end of the day, to me, hitting is like a negotiation, and like any negotiation that you have is what can I do to you? What can you do to me in terms of leverage? And like, what can you bully me into? So for me, my answer always from a very young age was, I don't care how hard you throw, I'm taking that away from you. And if I take that away from you, that's going to leave you very little because most guys, even I know it's gotten different now, but because they're like almost half and half. You watch a guy throw 100 pitches in a game who throws 94 miles an hour, and he's almost like a 50-50 split in terms of what he throws. And that's crazy to me because, I would always look, I wasn't a big stat guy. Again, I was more consumed about what I was doing, but 58%, 61%, those are my kind of guys because those are the kind of guys that like you get 2-0, 3-1, they're going to take their medicine. They're like, here we go. Let's see what you got. But now guys are mixing it up more. I don't know how I would respond to this. I would not be probably as good, or I would not be who I was. But for me, it was always, I'm not taking fastballs. And I was a little different in the sense that I looked in. A lot of guys had, but here's the thing. I looked in to hit it to like center field. And so that kept me, I was a big diver and I bent at the waist a lot. So when I looked out over the plate, I dove, and I was a diver and I would bend. And what happened was I would lose power because you're bending at the waist, and you really just would kind of just like serve a ball off the right, and then balls in, I was completely dead. So looking in for me kind of stood me up more. And, but again, I had to finish the thought with a thought that would get me to the inside of the ball. Yeah. And that just kept my posture good. Again, going back to where my body was and where I was and all that, it kept it to a very good A when I was good, when I would get to that launch position. And then from there, if I was approaching the inside of the baseball, because my aiming point, I was a big aiming point guy. Like when I would go to a stadium, I would sit there early in the day if I hadn't been there, and I would see landmarks like a thing on the wall or a Shell station, gas station, or whatever it might be, Comcast cable. I would be picking signs out, and I knew those were my signs that I would be going back and forth from in a game, depending on how I felt.
Holy moly.
That is so good.
Next level, man.
That's so good. I love that. I want to rewind it a little bit too, Paulie, because that's what I think is close to Cooperstown Paul Konerko talk right there. I want to go back to high school Paul Konerko, like when you were like your sons, Nick and Owen's age. Like, first off, how did you find your love for hitting? And like, who were your influences that really helped you in loving baseball?
The funny thing is I was more, I grew up until I was 11 on the East Coast. I was born in Rhode Island. I lived in Connecticut. And I was way more of a hockey player.
Really?
Yeah. Until I was, in fact, when I moved to Arizona just about when I was about to turn 12. And at that moment, I was a far better hockey player than baseball player, just because of the amount of time, back there, it's the reverse schedule of out here. Like you're playing hockey all year and you get like 3 months for baseball, and half those games get rained out. So, I was a hockey guy. My dad played hockey growing up, and in high school, played a little college hockey. And so I grew up in a hockey household in terms of like what was talked about. But so when I got out here to Arizona, but it started to go like this, it started to change because you just play so much more out here. And that started to take off. And it was a different time. I mean, like you played Little League. There was none of this club ball and all that kind of stuff, travel ball. You might have had some summer league teams or whatever when you got to like 14, 15 and beyond. But like, these kids now 8, 9 years old are playing 100 games a year. It's like crazy.
That's ridiculous.
If you let them. And so there wasn't that, you'd play Little League and then you'd have 13, 14 where you just kind of like have those awkward years. And then you go to be I just remember like my goals as a kid was like make the Little League All-Star team. And the next thing I remember was make the varsity team. There wasn't like all this other nonsense in between. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, it was more of a wholesome, and you played other sports, and you weren't. If it was the fall, you were playing football or winter basketball. You weren't bullied into choosing a sport so early. And now, having said that, it is a good thing. I mean, things evolve, and like the brand of ball. I mean, my kids at 13 years old that I coach, the stuff they're thinking on a field is probably stuff I didn't think of as a group, as a team until we were like 16, 17, like in terms of how to play the game and like, hey, that's a productive out. You got them over. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like that stuff I didn't even know. And I'm not sure until I got to the minor leagues, and so it definitely is better, but there's a lot of like pitfalls and dangers with what's going on, I think, with some of the youth stuff for sure. But the hitting stuff, the only thing I can remember was Will Clark. I was a huge Will Clark.
Oh, dude, that was my idol.
Yeah, so like I remember that was probably the first guy I ever dialed. I mean, Don Mattingly growing up on the East Coast was like my hero in terms of like he was like God, and he was so good, and like just everything about the guy was like just the best. But then I moved out to Arizona, and I got to go to spring training things. So like I didn't have a favorite team or anything, but I could go and my dad would take me or whatever. And you'd go, and even like my brother played at a junior college here where the A's were on the back fields there, and you could get right up close and see guys like, on the chain link fence taking BP out there and all that. So that's like about the time it really started to kind of take off with the baseball,
For you, Paulie, your high school numbers are ridiculous. Almost like, back RBI baseball.
Can I give you senior year in high school? 564, 12 homers, 50 RBIs in Rhode Island. Which
No, it was in Arizona. It was in Arizona.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
50 RBIs. What did you play? 50 games? Was that an RBI game?
I think it was like 35.
Yeah, it's more than an RBI game.
Yeah.
But Paulie, you dominated in high school. You get drafted in the first round by the Dodgers, and you come up in the Dodgers system, and you're one of the best prospects in the game. I think it was a shock for us too. Like the first couple weeks, or probably a month or month and a half into the season in '98, I come to the park one day, like, hey, we just traded for Paul Konerko, and we just traded Jeff Shaw for Paul Konerko and Dennis Reyes, the Big Sweat. And I'm like, why? Paul Konerko is like one of the best prospects in the game. What were your feelings on that? Like, what were your feelings when the Dodgers traded you to the Reds?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I will tell you that's the byproduct of a couple things, and that would be, went really fast in terms when I was drafted as a catcher, and I have some hip problems, and I wasn't good back there anyways. And after my A-ball year, they're like, this isn't, I don't think you're going to be able to do this as a catcher. So we're going to move you to first. And I was kind of like, yeah, because I was kind of tired of that grind. And once I moved to first, like my bat really took off, in AA and AAA. So like at the end of my AAA year, I was like 21 and had like a monster season. And it was like, okay, what do we do now? And I don't think I was really ready for the big leagues. Like, nowadays it's a little bit more seamless. There's a lot more younger guys. It's easier to break in my opinion, because the baseball's better, but it's also easier to break in because there's more of your peers around you. When you broke in, it was different because you had all these older guys and you had it was a different lifestyle. And I don't know if I was ready for that, but my numbers were saying I was. Right. And I got up there and just struggled, man. Like I just couldn't hit. It was one of those, like I'd go hit 180, like I think the first April in '98. And I mean, just did not even look like I belonged there, but then could go down and hit like 360 with my eyes closed in AAA. Yeah. It was like I was just in that in-between phase.
You're the 4A player, player.
Yeah. And then you couple that. So I wasn't doing well. You couple that with the Dodgers, who are the Dodgers, always trying to be good, always trying to win. They had a big payroll with guys they were trying to win with. And then the last piece of the equation would be they promoted Tommy Lasorda to GM. Right. So think about it. Like he was not a GM. He was not, and all I remember, because you have to be honest about things. And I just remember we got traded, even at 22 years old, which I got traded on July 4th. The Dodgers were like 7 or 8 games back of the wild card. And when I got traded, with Dennis Reyes, we were the top hitting prospect, the top pitching prospect. Yeah. And I just remember thinking I'm happy about this because I was looking, because I knew you guys were a younger team. Yeah. And I knew it was going to be more people like myself. So I was excited about that. But I also was like, man, that's a lot to give up, not taking myself out of the equation. You're 8 games back of the wild card.
Right. What are you
you're
doing?
Out of this in July, but they really wanted to win. And it obviously didn't work. And I think the other little side note to that is when they traded for Jeff Shaw, who it was, they didn't understand if you get a guy in the first year of a multi-year deal, he can walk after that. At least that used to be the rule. Right. So they had to rip that up and then back the truck up for him and pay him to stay, because it would have looked bad if he walked, because I don't think he wanted to be in LA.
Yeah, he wanted to stay in Cincinnati because he
could walk after that season. And he personally had a great year, I think. So they were like, man, we can't let this guy walk. We just traded these 2 prospects. So they had to now repay him. It was a bad deal all the way around.
Led the league in saves with the Reds that year. That's right before that. 42, then 48.
Yeah. So anyways, when I got to the Reds, it was actually a really good spot for me, with the exception of one thing. And there's no DH. I was excited about it, but I remember Ronnie Oster, right?
Oh yeah.
So because again, it wasn't what it is now with all the scouting. I'm sure there was scouting and all that, but it was kind of wait to see somebody kind of thing. And I got there and they were still thinking, because I had played AAA third base, but I was a first baseman all the way. But I had played enough third base that you could see on my card, oh, this guy plays third base. So I remember going out there to the stadium there, Synergy. And one of the first days when we got back off the road trip, and Ronnie Oster's like, we're going to do some early work. And I go to third base and he starts hitting me fungos. And as he's hitting me fungos, I can see the expression on his face kind of change. This guy's not a third baseman. And we came in from it and he's like, yeah, how do you feel about third? You play a lot of third. I'm like, I could just tell the line of questioning was very suspicious. And I was like, no, man, I'm a first baseman, man. Like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, I'm not good over here, you know? And so he kind of knew, but it kind of played itself out, and you started really swinging it. And the best thing that ever happened to me, I think Jim Bowden, who was the GM that time, his thing was like, man, I can just hoard talent and get people in here. I'm not going to really try to make it fit right away. Let's just see what happens, because I can get these guys. But ultimately, they did me a favor by not trying to prolong that one more year. They got me to the same type of team in Chicago, but with the DH. And that allowed me to get in more, and then, it took off from there,
Dude, let's talk about that, man. Like, because, obviously watching you go to Chicago, I was like, then I started watching you rake. I'm like, they might have traded the wrong guy. They might want to keep Konerko. But talk about your time in Chicago, man. I mean, you hit the ground running right in 99 when you got there, and you a 24 home run, just driving in some runs. What was it like starting to, get your career going and then really become the leader of that team?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, when I first got there, again, the environment was great. It was like a college team. We had a bunch of young players, but it didn't go right away. Like, I remember being in May, and I was hitting maybe like 250 with like six home runs and like 30 RBIs, like nothing crazy, maybe not worthy of being sent down on a rebuilding team, but I was not by any means like taking the world by storm either. And I was nervous. Like, I was like, because how it is, like when you're only a hitter, one bad week and like you could be gone, like you just don't, you're always kind of nervous. I remember Jerry Manuel, who was a great guy and he was a good manager, but he was a patient guy and had a good bedside manner. He was a great guy for that team. And he just came up to me like during BP one day and he was like, hey man, like just relax, man. Like, you're going to be here. You're going to be here all year. Like, just relax.
Right.
And like, I was like, okay, like, it's not the end of the world if I go 0 for 4 tonight. Like, go up and do what you're going to do. And like, don't take everything so big every time. And so, of course, you start to relax and you start to become, because I don't know about you, Case, but that was at a point where I was probably pushing 300 to 400 at bats in the big leagues and really never felt like myself yet.
Yes.
And right around then, like in June, I remember we played the Cubs in interleague and like, it was a couple things here and there, got a little, I remember one of our coaches, Joe Nosik, he was an older bench coach. And I was like, you know me, I was kind of like very tightly wound and like, he used to call me Slash. And I'm like, why are you calling me that? He's like, because you're going to slash your wrists.
Oh my God, that's a great.
But he says, listen, I'm going to give you some good advice. And I still use this. This might be my best form of advice with the game of baseball that I ever got and certainly give to somebody. He's like, listen, I'm going to tell you something, because this guy played forever. He played in 50s, 60s, He's like, this is a game you cannot play frustrated. You cannot play it frustrated. He's like, but you can play it angry. And so I just became very like angry every time I went out there. I thought about stuff that happened with the Dodgers, the Red. I just became very angry and really was angry probably for the next 10 years. And, and to me, that worked for me. Like, I turned and channeled any frustration that I would have. And there's definitely times where you fall down and you get frustrated but that was kind of a thing where I was like, I'm going to play this a different way. And like, I'm going to find reasons to like, the days I don't have it, I got to find reasons to like hate someone out here and get after it and like compete in that way. And it just got me in a different mindset. And then, I kind of never let that go. And then as I got older, you get a wife and kids and all that.
Right.
But hopefully by then, your process of what you do every day and your things with hitting and all that, they should be able to get you through. It's just that your body falls apart,
Yeah. Well, you were angry at a lot of people because you started going 40 and 100 consistently every year after that. Sorry, Case.
Yeah, well, I think, Case can relate to this. Like, again, as a one-dimensional type of guy where you're not adding a whole bunch of, you can add hopefully your character and some leadership, and that matters. But at the end of the day, it's professional sports. Like, you got to deliver, you got to produce. Right. And so for me, it was like, once I felt like I wasn't myself for 2 or 3 years, 2.5, for that time. So when I got a handle on it and felt good and had it was like, I'm never losing this again. Like, and again, you lose it again. I lost it at the beginning of 2003. I lost it at the beginning of 2008. But, for the most part, when you as a hitter, like, because as a hitter, when you're coming with the big leagues, I didn't know it's a numbers game. And I really thought when I was with the Reds and it wasn't really taking off there, I'm like, maybe this is like my end of the road. Like, it happens for a lot of guys. How do you really know And it's not the worst thing in the world. Like, it's still pretty good to get to the big leagues and make it to the big leagues. But, I still felt, as a number one pick and having the minor league career I have, that would have been like a bust. So there's a lot of pressure on you. Sean can relate to that,
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And, it's funny, Paulie, I love what you're talking about your mentality, because you got to figure it out with what works for you. I always tell my kids or kids I work with, hey, you got to get in character. Like, I felt the same way, bro. Like, and I always say, like, collect the chips. Like, when I was growing up, hey, you're not fast enough, hit for enough power, this. And I just like, collect the chips. And I played a little angry too. Like, that same thing. You're a really nice guy, but in the box, I didn't feel nice. Like, I feel like I wanted to like chop your head off. Like, there was no nice about me. But I love that you say that, because, like, at the end of the day, when Paul Konerko gets in the batter's box, it's you versus you. You have to have get into character where you're like, okay, how am I going to beat this guy? Well, I'm getting angry. I'm getting angry for some of the things that have happened to me, and I'm going to go dominate him right now, hunt the fastball and hammer him. I think, like, that it's so cool to get into your mind there and think, like, man, no wonder. Like, it makes sense that you got into that character.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I as I got more into it, like with my hitting coaches and all that, I would look at it and I'd say, you're always, almost every hitter every day is like, my hands feel a little different. Like, there's always something that you're kind of maybe looking inward that you shouldn't be, but it's tough to get 100%. But I would always talk with my guys and say, like, where am I at today in my compete level against the pitcher? There's 100% of the pie to go around here. Where am I at? And it got to the point where, like, if I was like 60-40, like 60 against him and 40 against me, that's not going to cut it. Like, that's going to be a bad game. There's too much inward looking, too much like, what am I got going on? My foot feels weird. My hands feel weird. My elbow's too high, but it was almost like you could start putting numbers on it. Like, you know what? Like, usually when I'm like 70-30, that's good for like a 1 for 3 with a walk. Right? Like, like I could start to almost put numbers on it. But like, for me, getting to like that 90-10, 95-5, where, again, because I just think everybody is introspective to where it's tough not to take inventory on like how you feel that day, or, man, this box is kind of weird, or you're always kind of thinking like that. So it's almost tough to get 100% of it against him. But, man, if you can get it up in that 90s and get it close to 100, that's when the true talent of who you are is going to come out, and the swing you've worked on and all that, because you've cut everything loose and all the baggage has been cut loose now. And you're truly getting it. So, in a season, like I used to say, like in a major league season, you don't have a great season. You put together a great season, because there's a lot of nights of the 90-10s. There's nights of the 60-40s. There's nights of 90 or 10-90. Yeah. You're a complete mess. And, so you have to try to salvage. And, Jim Thome, he would always say, you know what, like, try to put something in the bucket, right? Like, if it meant that day, like, you got a hit by pitch and you went 0 for 3 instead of 0 for 4, you know what, man? Like, that's what today was, and come back tomorrow and try to do it again. But you're always just trying to scrape by and all that. But I would always be asking myself, this was probably like maybe from 2000, I don't know, like 7, 8, 9 and on, when I kind of started to kind of shape that in my mind, like, where am I at in that percentages? Because immediately you can change your mindset and get that to a better place, and then it starts to go,
Man, that's powerful stuff. Powerful stuff.
So
I hope every kid out there that plays baseball is going to listen to this.
The older you get, the thing I'm probably most proud of in my career is that, like, 2010, 11, 12, 10 especially, and then I think 12, it might have been like I think maybe 04 might have been like my best year in terms of just being dangerous the whole year. But I'm like right in the middle of my prime there. Like, okay, you should be. Right. But like those last years of 10, 11, 12, like I was an older player. Like I was.
Okay, I got your numbers. 2010, 30. Yeah. So 34, 35, 36 years in the league at your age.
Yeah.
In your 34 age season, you hit 312 with 39 and 111 with 30 doubles. In 35 age season in 2011, 331, 105 with 25 doubles. And then at 36 years old in 2012, you hit 298 with 26 and 75 and 22 doubles. Exactly what you're saying. Unbelievable number.
Yeah, so for me, like, I take the most pride in that because those years were complete mental control and ownership of my mental, and to me, like, that was what I was always after. it's one thing to have your body and have everything you got in your body, like that you were born with. And like, that's the years like 04, 05, 06. And like, that's great and all. But like when you start to wake up every day and can't get out of bed, or your back killing you and all that, you have to be mentally superior or to a place where you can compete. So I took a lot of pride in those years, because I can remember like facing guys and just being like, again, going back to the angry kind of thing, like, look at this young guy. This guy doesn't know anything about the game of baseball. I'm going to teach this guy a lesson. Like that type of mentality, but not looking at myself and questioning, man, I feel old. I don't feel like I don't have it. Because it definitely could have gone there, because I just didn't have the same like bat speed, the same snap in my body. But it was like solely done on my mental makeup of how I competed in those years. And I'm probably more proud of that than anything, because I think as a player, like that's the struggle from the time you get into the minor leagues, into pro ball, because this schedule just keeps coming at you every single day. And it takes you to places mentally that is just scary. And so like, I finally felt like I kind of owned my own mind, and it took me that long,
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Let's rewind it back to those years you talked about, some of the years where you're like, you know what, I'm just better. I'm just physically dominant. To that 2005 season with the White Sox. And you guys went wire to wire. I think it was the last time since the Cincinnati Reds had done it in 1990. You guys were the best team in baseball, first place all the way. Can you bring us back to what were some of the best memories of that 2005 team and just that season in general?
Yeah, I think it was just, I think we were picked to finish third in the division or something like that. And we knew we had a pretty good team because we had a really good bullpen. I remember, sitting there in spring training, and you look at kind of how we were built, and we're like, we could probably be pretty good this year. We were not thinking World Series, but when you're in the Central, as it pretty much stands today, it's not the best division.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like it's usually like a team that's good and then another team that kind of challenges them. And then the rest of the teams are like,
poop
rebuilding or something. Yeah. Right. So we were like, we could probably make it tough on whoever was, I think it was Minnesota, maybe. Like we could probably make it tough on them and be pretty good. And then it just started to go, and the team just came together as just a really eclectic group of like characters. And I just love that team from the standpoint of, because I was a hitter, power hitter, whatever you want to call it, hit homers, but like my mind is that of like a small ball, really kind of like the historic classic way to play the game, like moving guys over, hitting runs, bunts. Like I love all that stuff. I know a lot of people don't like it nowadays, but I really dig that stuff. And that team was very good defensively. It always felt like any game that was like a 2-1 game or a 1-0 game or 3, we felt like we were going to win that game. Right. And I love that team for that reason, is that it wasn't like we went out and just bludgeoned everybody down. We really knew how to play the game, and like we're smart guys and smart players, and we had great pitching. Like you got to have great pitching. Yeah. And it just all kind of came together. And as it went through and got into the playoffs and all that, it became a thing where any team that's ever won the World Series is you kind of become this thing for any city you're playing for. But obviously in Chicago, when neither team had won for so long, you get to the point where you're like, listen, we got to win this, or like these people, thank God we didn't know like through that run in the postseason how important it was to people, because I think we would have squeezed it way too tight if we would have known, because after we won, I mean, to this day, I got people coming up, and I mean, you have people coming up to you in tears after that, talking about their, grandmother who just died and their grandmother's grandmother. And like, there's just so much of a history there of like not doing it. And the Cubs went through the same thing a few years later, 10 years later, right. Which I'm very proud of to say as well. Like that was always one of my most proud things, is that clearly both of those teams for 70, 80, 90 years were racing for this. Right. And we got there first. Like I take so much pride in that.
It's cool.
Well, what I'm not like one of those guys like that gets about my team's the best. Although I will say in most rankings of postseason teams, you'll never see this team. Yet how many teams went 11-1?
Right. Right. Oh yeah.
They never talk about that team, but I'm like, how many teams just ran through the playoffs losing one game? There's some of them, but not many.
Not many.
But they don't really think, because we didn't have a bunch of big names, and we didn't have that, but like it was a really good team.
Talk about one of those guys, Mark Buehrle. I mean, Buehrle, when I look back at that team, I'm like, I don't know. I know Buehrle a little bit because I played against him, but for me, like there was something about his personality that, went on to that team. Talk about him as a competitor and, how good he was every fifth day.
Yeah. I mean, he was just kind of like I don't know how to explain it, because as you know, most starting pitchers, they're obviously great at what they do, or it's a different kind of animal in terms of how Mark was a guy that was meant to be probably like a position player, like the way his mind, just hanging out with the guys. That guy didn't even throw bullpens for like 10 years. You know what I mean? He would start a game and then he would play catch, I think, like on the third or fourth day. He'd just play catch and then go start another Major League Baseball game. Like he never really, he had a very just attitude of like, I'm going to go out there and just pitch. Sometimes it's going to go good. Sometimes it's going to go bad, but I'm going to have fun doing it. And, people say that, but they don't back it up. This guy backed it up. Like, I mean, he would be like, whatever. I mean, the stuff that he did as a pitcher was legendary in terms of his just like, I don't want to say his care level, because he definitely cared, but it was just how tight he didn't grip it. And that just kind of, I think, goes on to other guys, and it's just a fun atmosphere. And he was good. Like he had unbelievable control, and he just knew how to like compete and get people out, and just was not scared of anything. And just, he's definitely a one of a kind type of guy. I mean, there's definitely some other teams that have had guys like that, but guys that had, and he didn't have terrible stuff when he first came up, but for the large part of his career, he didn't have dominating stuff by any means. Most people couldn't pitch with his stuff and get by because they wouldn't be able to handle it mentally like he did. He just had a way of just embracing it and kind of like, I don't know. He was just slick, man. He was just slick.
Yeah. What was the biggest hit of your career?
Biggest hit in my career. I mean, I think obviously for context, I hit a grand slam in the World Series, which was a big deal.
Take us back to that. Take us back to that moment. What was that like?
Yeah. I mean, I think like when the World Series, the playoffs, what was good about that team was I'd only made it to the playoffs like a couple of times before that, but I knew like when we made it to the playoffs, the team I was on didn't feel like anything like the regular season, and it didn't feel like myself. It felt like this whole other animal. And that's probably why we didn't advance very far. That 05 team, right after the first game, it was like, wow, I feel completely normal. And this team feels exactly like it did in the regular season 4 days ago. Like, look out here, because like, we're a good team. So that was the same throughout that whole playoffs. But like getting to the World Series, there's definitely those moments where you catch yourself like, man, this is like what I dreamed of a kid. I can't believe I'm in a World Series, and we had to kind of block that out. Because again, I think our team had such an urgency because of the situation of like, you can't get to if you're the White Sox and you haven't been there in 80 some years, you can't get there and lose, or they went, I think, in 59 and lost, but you got to get this done. So that type of urgency, I think, kind of trumped any of like the just happy to be here stuff. Cause I remember, I forget who it was, but in that first game against Houston, somebody got to first base and they were just kind of, in case when guys get to first, they're usually happy because they just walked or got a hit. And they'll tell you like, they'll tell you everything you want to know. Everybody's always happy over there. And this guy, he's just like, oh, this is amazing. Like, the World Series, like, can you believe this? This is like, he was just all kind of caught up in the moment. And I just remember thinking like, we're going to kill these guys. because we were so like, intense about like, we can't let it go. Like we have it and like, it's in our hands and we got to go out. And I think we knew we were the better team, but it was like, we had to like finish. We had to finish. There was no enjoying. It was like, so going back to the Grand Slam thing, it was one of those where you're just competing and you're playing and you're looking to just get, I think it was, we were down by maybe 4-2, down by 2 runs, maybe 2 outs. And I wasn't feeling great that night or anything like that. And my thinking was, it just goes back to, as you've heard many times, don't try to do too much. I was just really trying to just like pick up a knock to drive in a run, or just put a good swing on something. And that's usually when you do something big, it's not when you're trying to do something big. Right. So, but that was definitely a time like, I hit it. I don't really remember running the bases, but like at first and like kind of getting out of the frame for a second and being like, man, I just hit a grand slam in the World Series. Like, but that was about the only time I kind of got out of it. Like I was pretty much, when it comes to that type of stuff, you enjoy it. Like looking back on it, it's hard when you're doing it,
Yeah, I know. Isn't that the truth? You're almost like on autopilot, when you're, especially in the place, like in a moment like that. Like, I think the cool thing, Paulie, is all the things you talk about, like getting your mind to a place, competing against guys. Like when you get to the World Series, the adrenaline is so high. How can I really sit in this moment? And for you to have the same thought process of, okay, let me just hit a line drive out the middle. Let me get it. Let me make hard contact. And then you go deep with a grand slam. That's unbelievable. I want to talk about a couple guys on that team, a couple names I want to throw out there. at the end of that run, when you guys were in the parade in Chicago and there was all those people and it was really a big celebration in Chicago, you gave the ball to Jerry Reinsdorf on the last out there. And I think everyone was wondering, hey, where'd that ball go? Where'd Paul Konerko put that ball? You gave it to Jerry Reinsdorf. What did that mean to you to give it to Jerry?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, you have to put yourself back into that time. Like nowadays, it's not a big deal anymore. Like, remember, but back then, remember there was the whole thing with like people getting the home run balls and trying to sell them and the value. Yep. And the year before was when the Red Sox won. And if you remember the thing with Mankiewicz.
Yeah, that was a big controversy.
Where it was like, I'm not giving this ball up. I'm keeping it for myself because this is, and it was kind of a thing back then, like the value of balls. I guess, I don't know if that's dropped off the face of the planet or what. I know it's like baseball cards now and cards. But so I remember like thinking, and I had caught the final out of our division clincher, the ALDS and the ALCS. So I had it in my glove at all the end of those. But again, not trying to get ahead of myself. In game 3, or game 4, I was thinking, okay, what happens if I do get this ball? And it's like, I'm not keeping it for myself. It's going to be something, because again, it was such a big deal if this was the Yankees and it was their 100th World Series, or it was, some teams that have won more recently, but this was such a big story for our fans and our people. It certainly wasn't going to go to me. Like, I'm just renting out the position for a few years. Like it's not me, and right. So the next thing is a guy, okay, who's been here the longest? This guy bought the team. At that point, it had been 25 years. I think in 80, he had bought it. So it's at 90. Yeah. So it clearly was going to go to him. And it wasn't, I didn't want to make a big spectacle out of it. Like it kind of turned out, but I never saw him after we won. And I had put that ball in a turf shoe.
Wow.
Yeah, because I didn't know what to do with it. I actually put it in a turf shoe. We packed up all of our stuff, or they packed it up. Big leaguers don't pack stuff up.
You don't touch your bags.
So I tipped the guy $20 like Casey to take my bag.
Paulie, I tipped 2. I didn't pay $2.
Yeah, 22. So anyways, that was it. I put the ball in the shoe. And the next time I saw the ball or saw the shoe was minutes before we got on those buses for the parade, because we met at the locker room in Chicago. So from Houston to Chicago, 2 days later, I saw the shoe 2 days later. Thank God the ball was still in it.
Oh my God.
And then I said, well, I'm not going to see Jerry till, because he's on a different bus and this and that. And I was flying out after. I'm like, you know what? This will be good. I'll bring it on the stage. And I got something. You got to figure out something to say anyways. I was nervous as hell about that. And so I was like, this will be kind of cool. And that's how it happened.
That's so cool. Yeah. I won't have a big speech. I'll just give Jerry the ball and get the hell out of the way. Let Jerry talk.
Yeah. A lot of people thought I was doing it like because I was a free agent, like this is a negotiating ploy. And I'm like, ridiculous. First of all, like, no. And second of all, like I got 2 other teams that are offering the same money. Like, so I didn't give them balls. So.
Oh, it's so great. There's so many guys to talk about that you played with, even like the Ozzie Guillens and stuff. But the one guy I want to talk about, I think it means so much, that organization in the booth, is Hawk Harrelson. And I think whenever you would homer, Paulie, it was almost like he was your dad. I'm like, is Hawk Harrelson related to Konerko? Like, freaking this guy, he loves it. Can you talk about Hawk, your relationship with him, and like what he means to that organization?
Yeah, well, we would always joke with the White Sox. I'm not sure if it still remains the fact today, but when I was there for like my time, when you talk about big personalities and like just larger than life figures, with the White Sox, if you made a list of it, it would probably get to like number 16 before you got to a player. Right?
That's a great point.
Like there's characters in that organization that have been there forever. And so Hawk clearly like top couple, maybe top one. Right. And he was just, I'm telling you, if you don't know, I mean, you guys probably know, but they did a documentary on him a couple of years ago that came out and all that. Like, go look at this guy's life. And like, this guy's done it all. He's like the real life Forrest Gump.
That's a great point.
He does. I'm telling you, go look at it. He's played Major League Baseball. He's been on the PGA Tour. He's like been on like an arm wrestling champion. He's done all these things in life, and he's got stories after stories after stories. And like it was just he never like, whether it was on the plane or in the clubhouse or wherever. Every time you came away with like some golden material. Every time you came away from him, because it would be like, he'd walk up like just not like a big deal and be like, hey, we'd start talking about hitting or something. He's like, ever tell you about the time I invented the batting glove? You're like, what? Excuse me? What was that? He's like, yeah. So we were in Kansas City and we're playing the Yankees, and he's a big golfer. He's like, and we were going to play a game the next day, a doubleheader, a game, and I was not going to play because it was like a platoon situation. And I went out and played like 18 holes or 36 holes of golf in the morning because he golfed a lot. He's a great golfer even to this day. And I came in, they're like, my hands were all blistered up and all that. And I came in and they're like, hey, they had a pitching change. They're throwing like a lefty. You're in. And he's like, my hands, so I wore a golf glove. And he's like, so, I went deep twice. And he's like, and then the next day, like Mickey Mantle and all these guys are wearing like a glove, like wearing, not like, cause they used to wear like the big workman type ones, that's not what he's talking about. He was the one that kind of made it to where like the tight, smooth fit. Right. It was a golf glove. Wow. But like, you're sitting there eating your lunch and next thing you know, you like find out that little tidbit. So you're kind of like, I got to go share this with somebody, but the guy's a legend. And I'll tell you what, man, like to this day, I still get texts from him. Like he texted me like maybe a month ago and he's like, I was just sitting around thinking about the best fastball hitters I've ever saw. And your name came to my mind. Like that text out of the thin air. You know what I mean? Like the guy loves the White Sox. He loves the players that played for him. And like, he's the man, and he would say in the booth, this is probably the biggest thing. He would say on a microphone in the booth, what you were dying to say as a player about the umpires.
Right. Oh yeah.
Oh, forget it.
He did not care. He'd be like, this guy's brutal. Yeah. He would say whatever he wanted to say. And it's like, yeah, he would back us up with that. So I always loved him for that. He's just a legend. I don't know how else to say it. Like he's a legend's legend,
That's so great. I think even if you're not a White Sox fan, but you watch the games, you're like, what's Hawk going to say today? Like what's he going to, and like how he was so pro White Sox. It was almost like, oh my God. He's like, he's like in the dugout with you guys, how pro White Sox he was.
I'm telling you, dude, it's legendary. The stories are endless. I mean, to this day, I'm on like text threads with guys and we talk Hawk, like, because there's just so many stories. Like, I remember the one time Hawk did this and it's like, it's just crazy. And we had other guys there too. Eddie Farmer, who just passed away. He was another one. Like we had some great characters there that were just legends. And honestly, I think I signed back there twice. Because of the characters, not because of any other reason. Because I'm like, I can't leave this. This is like built-in entertainment, to come back here and watch all this unfold,
It's so great, Paulie. Looking back, so you finish up your career with the White Sox, but looking back at your career, 6 All-Star games. And I know I went to a few All-Star games, not 6. But when I think back, those All-Star game memories for me, there was some really cool stories I could always tell. Do you have a memory from one of the All-Star games that you look back that you still tell to this day? A good story.
Well, I think for sure the first one always is like the biggest one because you just hear about it, you watch it as a kid growing up, and like to make one of those, and obviously to make it, like I think there's a couple of years I made an all-star team, or I'm not sure I maybe should have, and there was a couple of years I should have made it that I didn't. It kind of bounces around, right? Like if you're good and you play long enough, there's a couple of years you might get snubbed, or so there's a lot of moving parts to make one. So you never know. You could have a heck of a career and never play in one. So I think the first one you get to, you almost have to assume like, I'll never be here again, Right. At least that's the way my negative mind thought. Remember I told you, like it took me 20 years to figure it out. But I just remember and it was like prime Yankees, right? 2002, like still the big boys of the Yankees and Joe Torre, and just being in that locker room, with like Jeter and Joe Torre being the manager and whatever, Mario Rivera was there. And like, just, because it was like we talked about earlier about when I first got to the big leagues, not feeling like myself or not feeling like I belonged. Well, then fast forward 3 or 4 years where I'm like, yeah, like, I'm a big leaguer now. Like I'm a big leaguer. And then in that situation, it's like, I felt like,
what am I doing here?
There's a whole other level of big leaguer now. Like there's a whole other, spectrum here that I'm not at yet. But it shows you. And I do remember Robin Ventura was on that team and he was just a great guy and funny, just a funny, just dry sense of humor guy. And that was the only time I ever spent with Robin until he came back as the manager, because when I never really played against him, I don't think I played against him at all the whole rest of the way till he retired. And then because he retired shortly thereafter and maybe 04 or something like that. And then I didn't see him again, but I do remember Robin. I remember Robin in that clubhouse just kind of making me feel good or saying something nice to me and being kind of in awe of him. And So the first one I remember, and I got a couple hits, and of course that was the game that was the tie.
Yeah. What did you think about that?
I remember
2 for 2, 2 ribbies, by the way. Two
I
for
think
two,
that
two
tie
ribbies.
cost me an MVP. Could have. I think at one point I drove in the leading run maybe, and I was out of the game, and I was like, man, like they have to. I was thinking to myself, like this would be kind of cool. And then they tied it, and then we had nobody left, and but I was just shaking in my boots, getting a hit, and I was happy to, I don't know if I enjoyed that one as much, just in terms of I was staying so ready to play and try to be good. Then ones after that, I was kind of like, I enjoyed it probably a little bit more. And then as you get kids, right, I had some kids that were young enough that could enjoy, they were younger, but they were there taking pictures. I got pictures on the wall here, but I just remember the first one, wow, this is amazing,
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So at the end here, bro, we do a couple games. Well, the first one is who owned you and who did you own?
Got the stats here too.
I got the own one easy because I played golf with him the other day. And go look it up. Kyle Loesch. Okay. I started off my career, which we faced each other a lot because he was with Minnesota and I was with Chicago. I believe I started off my career. It's actually on his baseball card. His claim to fame is a stat against me on his baseball card. I think I started out my career against him 0 for 28 or 0 for 20. It's either 27, 28, 29, somewhere in there. And I could not hit the guy. And I think I did hit a homer off him. And again, it was all going back to the conversation earlier about pre 04, post 04 in terms of the way I hit. He had a very good slider. He had a bunch of different speeds in that slider, and I could not hit it, and I couldn't hold up on it. I had no answer for it until I found an answer out for it. So he's definitely the guy.
I got numbers on Kyle.
Yeah. There was a time there. So Kyle would be the guy that I don't know what the final numbers were, but there was a time where, think about it. I went 7 straight games without a hit against him.
Yeah. 6 for 50 in 55 at bats. But then, like you said, 2 dingers and 5 ribbies, which may have been towards the end of that.
It was at the end of that. Wow. I promise you. So that guy for sure. And we played golf the other day, and he owned me again out there. That was nice. And, but now, as far as owned, the only reason why I know this number, and it's not a lot of numbers, but it's kind of a joke a little bit between one of our guys with the White Sox, Jimmy Gobble, left-handed pitcher, right? Jimmy, he played for us one time. Great guy, good dude.
Got the numbers.
But for some reason, I think I'm 4 for 5 or 5 for 6 with 4 homers or something.
You have an 833 batting average. Let's just say it that way. 5 for 6 with 4 home runs and 6 at bats off one guy. That's ridiculous.
Right. And
how did he come to the ballpark?
They signed him one year to play for our team, and I'm like, well, there goes. I'm going to go to 26 home runs from 30 now because he's on our team.
That's so funny.
And a quick story about that was we were playing in Kansas City once, and one of those homers, I don't know what went on. Was it Ned Yost was the coach, right? And manager. And there was a situation in a game, late in the game, where I think I had a lefty behind me in the batting order, and Gobble's down there warming up. The guy who's pitching is a right-hander. He gets a right-hander out in front of me. And so I'm walking up to the plate because I'm like, okay, this guy's going to be for me. And then if this guy gets me, they'll bring in Gobble for the left-hander. Or if I get a hit off this right-hander, this right-hander has my name on it all the way here. Right. I start walking up to the plate. Out comes Ned. I don't know if Gobble did something to offend him or did something wrong. I walk up to the plate. He comes in. I was a pitch count thing. I don't know. He takes this right-hander out and brings Gobble in.
Oh, my God.
All right, I was like, this was I couldn't believe. Listen, anytime as a right-handed hitter, they're bringing a lefty in. I don't even care if it's one of the upper echelon guys. You kind of want it. You kind of want the lefty. Yeah. And I just couldn't believe it. And then it resulted in a homer. And I was like, it was like Christmas came early kind of thing. But Jimmy wound up coming on our team. He was a great guy. And but it was one of those things where, as Case will tell you, these numbers, man, the way they shake out against people back and forth, they make no sense sometimes. The guys you hit well and the guys you didn't, and it's just all, I don't know. It's crazy. Because now there's numbers for everything, and there always was. But you laugh sometimes when you see some of the numbers, how your results were against this guy this and against this guy that, and how I never did this. And the funny thing is, when you retire and you get out of it for a while, you don't remember any of it. All you remember is I he was a good dude. He was a good dude. I didn't like that guy or whatever. That's all you remember. That's all that matters.
True. Yeah, good teammate. Didn't like playing against him. It's
came
so
to play
true.
every day. No one's talking about OPS. No one's talking about,
So true. The last thing we do is we do a game called 9 and 90. It's 9 quick questions. Chinch goes first. Chinch will ask the questions. I'll go first, and then Paulie, you go off you go second.
Okay.
All right, you got this? First of all, Paul, you need to write a book, man. You need to write a book on hitting because this was the most. I've just been sitting here.
I was thinking about doing a hitting podcast, but I think I would need to I would do it in English, and I would need people to translate it in English.
We can look into that after that.
Hall of Fame baseball broadcaster Marty Brenneman here. It's time for 9 in 90, the most ridiculous segment in all of sports.
Okay, we're going to kick things off with somebody everybody's friends with here. First question, Casey, true or false? Jim Thome looks exactly like Mr. Incredible from the Incredibles movies.
True. He looks just like Mr. Incredible, just as strong as him, too.
Yeah.
Is it my turn to answer that? I would say true to the point that I think they drew Mr. Incredible off of him. Not the other way around.
I bet you're right. I bet you they did.
That's a great point. All right, second one, Sean. What type of socks do you wear more? White socks or black socks?
You know what? I got to match the shoes. I'm like, oh, wait, these are my slippers. I have slippers on. I usually have my black shoes on. I usually wear black socks with my black shoes.
Okay.
Black.
Yeah. There you
Black
go.
all the way.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. Next one. Case, who is your favorite Paul out of these three? Paul Newman, Paul McCartney, or Paul Revere?
Paul Newman, Paul McCartney, I'd have to say probably Paul McCartney because I don't know,
he's
the beat? Just so legit.
I'm gonna say I'm with Case on that one. I'm a big music guy, and I just watched that whole Beatles.
So good! That was unbelievable.
You got 12 or 14 hours to waste. You need to kill 14 hours. That's where you need to go. But it was awesome, and he was a legend. But you watch that thing, and you're wow,
you can see
they're all talented, but he was clearly the driver of that bus.
Yeah, so cool. All right, this is a double question, Sean, and I'm interested in this answer. You got a peanut butter and jelly. Do you go crunchy or creamy peanut butter? And do you go grape or strawberry jelly? Make your sandwich.
Bro, right now I go crunchy and grape. Guaranteed.
Okay.
That's bam.
I like that. There you go.
Crunchy and strawberry.
Wow.
In fact, at our golf course, at the little rest stations, they have you open the refrigerator, and they have all Uncrustables.
Oh, those are
right?
so addicting.
And they have all grape, and they have all strawberry. I'm not sure I've ever grabbed a grape.
Nice.
Paula, you need to, bro, because it's better than that strawberry you're grabbing. I'm telling you.
Maybe if I have one, I'll make some birdies or something.
Mix it up, dude.
I'm going grape next time.
Okay, let's go regional here. Regional foods: Chicago deep dish or Skyline chili. Case.
You know what? I'm a Cincinnati guy, so I just like the 5-way. I told you, I like the 5-way side of chili. Paulie wasn't there long enough to really appreciate the Skyline, so I can't imagine just going there.
I would say I don't like deep dish pizza. So I would go with pretty much. I don't like I like it thin. I like it. I never understood the allure to it. It's hard to eat. It's messy. And there's a lot of great pizza places in Chicago that aren't deep dish, but I also am a big chili fan, so I'm gonna go Skyline.
Nice. Oh, there we go. Hey, Paulie, how about we go out to dinner in Chicago, like Gino's East or whatever, and Pete Harns would bring everybody out, and we would have these pizzas. Dude, you'd have 2 slices and then a bowling ball the rest of the night. I don't feel good. I think I might have to go to the hospital.
It's big.
It's like a bowling ball in my stomach.
Not good, yeah. I probably had it less than 3-4 times my whole time in Chicago. Because after I had it a couple times, I'm like, I don't want that.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's great. I agree. Okay, this is a weird one. In your next life, Sean, would you rather come back as a dog, a cat, or a parakeet?
Oh, definitely a dog. 100%.
Okay.
I want to come back as a dog owned by me because you'll never get treated better and more catered to in your life than being one of my dogs.
That's great.
But I guess if I was in another life, I wouldn't be here. But yeah, definitely dog. Although, Case, I could see you with the parakeet. Because you could talk. You could,
and I can fly.
Yeah,
I can fly and talk. Maybe a parakeet is what I should have picked.
Yeah,
that's way better.
I love it. All right, last two are very violent questions. I apologize in advance, but I'm excited for the answers. Who wins in a fight in their primes between Hawk Harrelson and Cowboy Joe West, Sean?
Oh my God. Oh my God. Well, Joe West is so angry that I don't know if Hawk. I mean, I don't know Hawk as a fighter. I know Hawk's a tough dude, but Joe West, I think you'd have to kill Joe West. So I think Joe West is going to win that fight.
Once you said who would win in a fight, Hawk Harrelson, I didn't even need to hear the rest of the question. It doesn't matter. He would win against anybody in the world. Go look at his hands. Just go. I mean, the guy, honestly, like, the Chuck Norris jokes, like Chuck Norris. There's Hawk Harrelson jokes like that. Like, he is, I would never bet against that man in any combat. He's been in a lot of bar fights and a lot of, he'll tell you about it. He told me one great story about a bar fight in Venezuela once. It's not for this show, but.
No, yeah, it is. Go for it.
Yes, it is.
What do you got?
It was pretty dangerous. Like, there was guns pulled and knives pulled, and this was like when he was playing winter ball there, like in the 60s. Or like 70s, like when we were playing. And but yeah, Hawk Harrelson is known to have gotten in. Here's a quick tidbit. I don't know, maybe you remember this, Sean. I forget what year it was, but it was when so we had AJ on the team, AJ Brzezinski, and we were in Texas. And something had happened when Texas was at our place the week before. AJ did something shockingly.
Of course he did.
And anyways, Padilla hits him like in the elbow, his right elbow. And okay, you hit him, it's over, whatever. Comes up the next time, hits him again, like same spot. And like, to AJ's credit, I mean, these two balls got him good, and I think he had to come out after the second one. Like, he literally could not move his arm. Hawk Harrelson went from the booth after they took Padilla out. He went to their clubhouse and called him out, wanted him to come out of the locker room.
What?
At like 70 years old.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome.
So you tell me who would win in a fight. That guy's an animal. I'm telling you.
Padilla was huge too.
I know. I don't think it would have been a great move at that age difference. And Padilla was that guy's a tough guy too, But like, that just shows you Hawk's mentality.
Wow. Yeah, right. He's looking to kill somebody. I love it.
Okay, last one. I'm very excited about this one. In this corner, Sean Casey and Greg Vaughn. In this corner, Paul Konerko and Jim Thome. Tag team wrestling match. Who wins?
Jim Thome's strength. This is the only thing that scares me. Is Thome, Paulie knows. I feel like if Thome gets his paws on you, like, you got a real problem. You got a real problem on your hands. So I don't know. I just say Thome might figure out a way to dominate all of us.
I would say me and Jim are way too nice and have too many back problems to be doing anything off top turnbuckles. The other thing I would say is that the other way it would shape up is Greg Vaughn would jump into the ring, and I see Casey taking more of like the mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart manager role on. I don't really see him getting his hands dirty. I see him like being more like the Bobby Heenan manager type.
That's great.
Not really doing the wrestling part. But at the end of the day, I think the belt is probably going to them.
I say I'd be behind him going, get him, Vonnie, get him, Vonnie, get him.
Yeah, you'd be playing to the crowd and not risking any injury or anything like that at all. You would just be
so good.
Me and Jim would just be trying to figure out ways not to hurt our backs.
So good. All right, we did it. That's it, Case. Good stuff.
Yeah, Paulie, man, awesome, man. Thank you so much for your time, bro. It's great catching up, man. And we're glad this is your first podcast ever. So when you do a million other podcasts, know that you came in the mayor's office first.
No, this is it. I'm retiring. It can't get any better. No. This is it. I'm done with podcasts.
And we're writing a book.
Zoom.
You're writing a book. You're writing a book. We won't care. We'll translate it. You have to write a book on hitting. That was the biggest clinic between you guys just now. So,
dude, Paulie, when we were talking hitting, I had to steer the show back because I'm like, I wanted to stay here for 3 hours. I wanted to stay there for 3 hours and just keep talking. That's why when we're done with this, I'm going to call you at some point. I want to talk hitting again. I love that stuff, dude. It's just so good.
Listen, I always tell people, I said, listen, I went to bed for 20 straight years, sleepless a lot of nights, waking up every single day, wondering if I was going to get a hit, just like an absolute mess for 20 years. I should get something out of the equation. And hopefully it's some knowledge on how to do it. You know what I mean? Because, like for 20 years, you just sit there and you're a slave to it. And you're like, just everything is about hitting and hitting. So I'm hoping I took some out with me, and we can pass it down the line and help somebody out to not make the mistakes that I made and get them out of that quicker. That's my goal. So.
Dude, I love it, man.
We'll talk hitting anytime you want. Maybe we'll do like a whole show or something.
Dude, I would love to, bro.
No question.
You know what we should do is when the season gets going.
Yeah.
Maybe some guys that are scuffling or something like that, or we can take a look and we can, or something. We'll do a show where we try to really dive in on some guys about like where they're at. Because I think it's a smaller audience of who wants to hear that, but there's probably some baseball people out there that are like, hey, is this swing oriented? Is this mental? Is this
totally? Because
it's so hard to find the anatomy of a slump or the anatomy of a downtime. That's like anybody who can figure that out or at least dial it in is the good hitting coaches. And I'm certainly not one of them, but I feel like that is a huge thing of the guys I've been around is like the anatomy of how you got to where you're at when you're scuffling and getting the roadmap out.
Right.
Like that's a thing that makes people special that coach it. And I was lucky to have a couple for sure. So yeah, we can talk. I mean, or guys that are hot, what makes them so good? Like, why are they good right now?
Whatever you two want to talk about with regards to hitting, you can do it.
This is so good. I got one more question. I'm not letting this go. So when you were scuffling, what was your thought process? Like, I remember when I was scuffling, I remember Don Mattingly saying, when I'm scuffling, I try and get jammed. And so that was something I thought like, okay, if I get jammed, I'm seeing the ball deeper, making better decisions. If I do that and I'm not living out front all the time, I'm going to struggle for 3 or 4 games, not 3 or 4 weeks. What was your thought process when you were scuffling to get back on track?
Well, before I learned, what I learned, it was try harder and do more. And that was obviously not the right answer. As I got better and I understood things, for me, it was pretty simple. It was again, going back to mechanics, take the body out of it. Take my body out of this. Path is king.
Wow.
That's my in my head. And that's what I try. Path is king. Because to me, I can hit with a good path and I can pick up some knocks and I can survive. I can always survive if my path is good. But to do that, I got to take my body out of it on the swing. But just remember, you have to still get to that A place because you can't you still have to use body to get to that place. It's once you're at that place and at that launch or at your platform or whatever you want to call it, once you're there, then I would try to take as much body out of my swing as I could and just path it out. And that I knew if I did that, it kept the ball to the middle of the field more, left center to right center gap. And there's more chances for hits there. When there's more body, you're putting balls on the ground to your pull side. And it's not good. So that to me was what I would always go back to. And that's how I did a lot of my work, like all day. I never really took like a full game swing during the day. I would just take a bunch of swings where I would completely eliminate my body and just really try to groove in that path and then slowly start to implement, like say more of a backside or more of where I could trust myself. Like I used to say like the knife is always sharp. So I wouldn't be like, oh, 3 good swings. I got it. And then just go air it out. Because to me, it was always like looming that like disaster right around the corner. So for me, like I wanted to always just groove in that path and then slowly trust myself with more intensity with my body,
Dude, that is gold right there. Path is king. That is absolute gold. Absolute gold. I love that, man. Dude. Paulie, this is so great. We are going to take you up on that too.
Yes.
Down the road, we'll do a special mayor's office. We'll bring in you, maybe Jimmy Thome, some other gurus. We'll all sit and watch a game, maybe with a couple guys that we love. We'll break down the game and just talk hitting.
Totally.
Yeah, man, whatever. You got my number. After this, I'll officially put you into my phone. No, I'm just kidding. You were in there. But yeah, no, anytime, man. I like to talk hitting, man. That's my favorite part of the game. So
awesome, dude. All right, Paulie, dude. Thank you so much for your time, brother. I'll be in touch and good luck with the golf game, dude. I'm sure you're obsessing over that. A lot of sleepless nights with your golf game now and that swing.
Yeah. I have to put it somewhere. So my wife hates me now because I
love it.
I appreciate it, that was fun.
Okay, man. Thanks a lot, brother. See you, bud.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Wow, Chinch. That was awesome. I knew it was going to be because I know Paulie and I just know the way he thinks. And, just going down memory lane with him, man, it was just, it's really awesome.
It's funny. You said we do the research for this and we talk the whole week going into it. And you and Casey, for all you guys, he talks to other players who are friends in the same community as him. Like, hey, talk to me about Paul. What was it like playing with Paul? And you said like, the number one thing was everybody was like, this guy thinks about baseball differently and at like an advanced level. Holy cow, does he ever, man. Like,
well, that's the word they use. People are like, this guy's an artist in the batter's box. This guy's an artist in the batting cage. Like, wow, that's pretty impressive to think of it that way. That's the way.
Yeah.
What a great career. And we didn't really get into it, but he was 2.5% on the first Cooperstown ballot.
Joke.
You got to go back and look at the numbers. I mean, the guy has a statue in Chicago. He's probably the best, if right next to the Big Hurt, is the best or second best Chicago White Sox player of all time.
Absolutely.
I don't know, man. In baseball history, like you're telling me he's 2.5% off the ballot in Cooperstown? No, that doesn't sit well.
What if he played with the Yankees for those 4 years that they won a World Series? He'd be first ballot. His numbers put him up there. Bernie Williams, Paul O'Neill, those guys that were doing it then. His numbers are better. I love those guys, and they're great players. He's a Hall of Fame player.
Unbelievable.
Anyway, awesome job, man.
All right,
great
man.
job.
Chinch. Yeah, great show, dude. Good to have Paulie on. I love that it was his first podcast ever, too. So the
cool.
mayor's office got Paul Konerko.
Yeah.
First podcast ever, man. Everybody out there, if you're listening, download, subscribe, write us a review, do all that stuff. It helps us a ton. And check us out on YouTube and Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Chinchy, I love you, brother. I'll see you next week. And stay grateful, my man. Support this week for the mayor's office is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best of men's below-the-waist grooming champions of the world. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped just launched their 4th-generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right, the 4.0, baby. Join over 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code THEMAYOR at manscaped.com. I'll tell you what, though. I love these things, Chinch. I've had them. I've had Manscaped 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and this is the 4.0. This one has a new sleek design. It's perfect for guys like me, dude. I'm one of the hairiest guys going.
That's a fact.
And that's the fact. And forever, man. Forever. I've been looking for the best trimmers. Even going way back years when I was playing, I'd always nick myself up, cut myself as the work. These trimmers right here, man, they are the best. They are the absolute best. Trims up my back, trims up my arm, the jewels, whatever it takes. Yeah. But this trimmer is the absolute best. The 4.0, the lawnmower from Manscaped.
I can vouch for that. I know Sean wears a sweater 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and he needs this. He sent me one. I'm so psyched. I shave with it. That's how good it is.
Yeah, and Chinch, I've tried every one you can try. Every clipper you can possibly buy, I've tried. Yeah. This by far is the best.
Yeah, Sean puts a clipper on his, it'll break the clippers, but not the Manscaped. Yeah. So,
everyone should have this, bro. Everyone should have one of these.
They absolutely should. So here's how you get it, okay? You get 20% off and free shipping with the code THEMAYOR, right, Sean? The Mayor?
Yes.
At manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping, manscaped.com, and use the code THEMAYOR. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped, and you can look as clean as Casey does now. When he doesn't use a Manscaped, it's like Sasquatch. There's people call cops. Unbelievable.
Lawnmower 4.0. Go get it. It's unbelievable, Chinch.
Do it.